The worst horror movie I ever saw was fucking great.
Hello and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Strayer and this is
John C. Myers.
And we're a horror franchise podcast discussing each film in horror franchises. And today we are discussing Hellraiser 4 Bloodlines from 1996. But first and most importantly, we have a returning special guest. Welcome back to the show, Michael Holloway.
Thank you. Great to be back.
Last time was Saw 6?
No, it was the Chainsaw 2.
Chainsaw 2.
Yes.
Actually, last time was a Halloween update of what we were watching.
When we mentioned that we were moving on to Hellraiser, you jumped at the chance to talk about probably your favorite, Hellraiser 4, because you're rolling in spaceships and stuff.
Wow, you are lying. I jumped at the chance to do 3 or 4 because I knew I wasn't going to get to do 1. I'm not that important. I don't want to do 2 because we have differing opinions on that one.
Right.
And 3 and 4 are the kind of trash that I like. So I was good with either of those. After 4, no way.
Oh, you're not coming back for like 6, 7, 8, any of those?
No.
But you will be watching along with us, though, right?
No.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
You are on your own.
Got it. Yeah. So, I didn't have much of I just thought, looking back on the last time I had watched 3 and 4, which has been forever ago, I was just thinking like 4 just seems ripe for a little bit more, even though we talked for an hour and a half about part 3 somehow. But 4 just felt like it was its whole own mess that thought there would be plenty to talk about.
So it's a very ambitious B movie.
Yeah, very, very ambitious for what the money that they had.
Yes.
Extremely ambitious.
So, John, you said that you tapped out at 4 last time you were doing this run through, correct?
Yeah, I did not.
Halfway through?
Yeah, I did not even make it through 4. I mean, I couldn't tell you this exact spot, but this one, I struggled this time around as well. I had to work hard to find things to enjoy about this movie.
Yes. And Michael, you have seen this one before, correct?
Yeah, I had this memory that I liked this one. Not that I thought it was some great horror film, but I always had a soft spot for Bloodline, and I remember liking it, but it's been well over 10 years since I last watched it. I'm sure that the last time I watched it was with you, Jim.
You're probably right.
Viewing when we lived together. Mm-hmm. It had been a long time, though, and it was a little rough. It was a little rough. Yeah.
I have this funny connection in my head for this movie, which was in 1996 when it came out. You know how when you're in a group of friends, especially guy friends, like somebody ends up being the shitheel for a month or something. Like,
sure.
Somebody gets knocked around for a while. Well, evidently around when Hellraiser Bloodlines came out, it was my turn to be up. And my friends called me and just said, yeah, we don't have room in the car to take you with us to go see Bloodlines at the Dollar Theater. And I was bummed. But you know what? They got pulled over for launching bottle rockets out of a car on the way home and had to go to court over it. So I did. And I always told my friend Luke, that because you disinvited me, I dodged having to go to court and talk about launching bottle rockets out of a car. So,
or watch Hellraiser 4.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when you're like 16 and have nothing else to do on a Saturday, Hellraiser 4 that's where it's at. So we watched the Alan Smithee version, correct?
Yes.
That's what all 3 of us watched.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So I watched the one that's on the Arrow box set, which is that version. And then on the Arrow box set, there's also the work print that I won't belabor us with a bunch of trivia about that necessarily. But I also watched that one, and that was, I don't know. I'm not going to say it was better, but it was interesting.
Yeah, watch. It's like by that one, it was already on the Peter Atkins 6th revision going through it. And then even after that, and after I got done filming, the execs at Miramax were like, hey, how come Pinhead doesn't show up right away? And how come this and that? And so they re-kajiggered a bunch of stuff, did a whole bunch more shooting. And that's why you end up with Alan Smithee instead of Kevin Yeager. Took his name off it. And it was told, from what I understand, it's more linear, whereas this one kind of jumps around. And that to me is a huge detriment in this movie, is the decision to do that.
Oh, yeah.
It slows it way down. And just there's a lot of mistakes around that and then stuff throughout. But apparently, from what I understand, it wasn't an easy shoot either.
Yeah, not an easy shoot. And
it's hard to film in space, you know?
That's true.
I mean, that's
true.
half the problem, right? Just getting up there. Yeah, it was originally supposed to be, in the 3 periods of time, it was supposed to be 30 minutes apiece and give you a book, a prequel and a sequel to Hellraiser, if you will. And Miramax signed off on that without requesting an outline. They just said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Go shoot a movie.
You guys have made us money. Well, you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it.
Yes, until they found out that Pinhead doesn't show up for 48 minutes into the film, which is where he shows up in the screenplay that they did go ahead and read and verify.
Clive Barker still was somewhat involved in this in like an executive producer role. And then some of the stuff was his idea. It was initially his idea to do the like looking back at someone throughout, family throughout time. It was Peter Atkins that said, well, why don't we make it Le Marchand, the inventor of the box?
And he's even in the book.
Yeah.
In the original short story.
Yeah.
And the way the work print starts out is actually you spend more time in the early French storyline too. Like Angelique is the one who like decides that she wants a puzzle box made, and there's a whole party sequence where these kind of like libertine guys get invited to open up the puzzle box, which makes complete sense. And then they turn into these kind of like not full on Cenobites, but like pseudo Cenobites, as we called in part 3. Lots and lots of extra weird stuff. There's even like clown Cenobites at a ballroom dance.
They filmed all of this? This is in the...
They filmed the Libertine guys, and they're in the work print. The clown Cenobites in the ballroom dance were not filmed, but that was a part of the original thing. Or if they were filmed, it's not in the work print.
There was a thing, and I think they nixed this before they even filmed it, but there was supposed to be a bit where Pinhead and Angelique fight later, where like Pinhead shoots a chain out of his mouth and then like sucks it back up and goes onto the ceiling like a spider.
Ooh.
There's a lot more like them fighting, because I think moving like Angelique is a character that's really not very fleshed out, like her relationships with people, with what for the as much as a foundational thing she's supposed to be to this movie. They kind of just gloss over a lot of it.
Yeah.
And it sounded like that first in the work print or in the original version that there was a lot more of that to give her a little bit more grounding and like to make her relationship with Pinhead make any kind of sense.
The Angelique stuff is a little bit more. Her and Pinhead are adversaries more so in the work print. And
right.
She's more like Pinhead takes like more of a back seat for a lot of it, which, as we've discussed, that's where he fits in better when he's not like the primary guy.
Yeah.
But,
he got his job back after part 3. We learned.
There you go. Yeah. So in this version, we start off in space. 2127, 2167.
You think of so many movies that start in space, be it your Star Wars or Aliens, whatever. There's always this like sweeping, slow, like pan of stuff, or, revealing like, yeah, it's ours, but guess what? You're in space. This one starts basically, okay, so you're in space, obviously, and it just moves right on. Like it's just, hey, here's the outer ship. Here's some corridors. Just boom, 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 boom. Like it doesn't feel like an opening of a movie. It just feels like someone took a piece and then put it over here and that's it. So that was very jarring and a kind of a crummy way to go about it.
It's like there had already been precedent for moving a horror movie into space at this point. So they were just like, let's just get to it. Let's get to the fact that this is going to be in space. Let's not have a good reason for it. Let's not introduce it. Let's just boom, here you are, space station.
Yeah, obviously you're in space, which this is one of the, as far as like the big name ones that we think the big franchises, this and Leprechaun went to space before Jason did. Like, so that was, and even then that was about the same year. It's not like it was a huge precedent.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, the joke is, when do they get to space? But Hellraiser was one of the first at part 4.
Oh, interesting.
One of the first, yeah. They're the first to run out of ideas.
So after the opening credits, when you first see the space station, the very first thing you hear is just a complete Alien ripoff. Jerry Goldsmith, little 2 flute notes, staccato. They had to do it. They just could not help themselves, could they? So many sci-fi movies have done this, right? But it's really kind of amusing that this movie, it's like the very first sound.
Which is not by Christopher Young this time.
Right. Who's the musician?
Daniel Licht. Not a good score. Not a good score.
It's not awful, but it's just, I don't like it.
It's very obvious The Jerry Goldsmith riff at the beginning is isolated.
Yes.
It doesn't do any more of that, thankfully, in the rest of the movie. But it's just it's very bombastic score and always kind of over announcing itself.
I think some of that is because the previous, like the Christopher Young, were very much like that as well. But this doesn't have that same operatic feel to it. So it definitely feels larger than it needs to be.
Are you saying the film feels small considering it spans 300 years or 400 years? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, basically.
Our hero that we open up on, I just wrote in my notes, just said Pete Davidson looking guy here. And he's...
I called him Muppet Babies Vin Diesel.
I like both of those things, but you put them together, I'm not so sure. He's working on some sort of, T-800 looking Terminator robot guy here. It's just such a shameless spin on that.
Well, but the concept makes sense, right? We've seen in the previous movies that people open the box themselves, and he has the clever idea that I'm going to use robotics to open the puzzle box. I like that. I think there's potential there. I do think it's weird how much the robot looks like a Terminator, but it's a cool concept of like, he's in this other room. He's got 2 power gloves on and there's it totally separate from him in a sealed place. This Terminator robot, it's going to open the box and he's going to do it through the power gloves. Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
It on a fundamental level, it does make sense to use the Lament configuratron to do it. But on some level, to me, it's like there's a distancing that I'm uncomfortable with. Like if this is somewhat of a religious experience and it's all about like sort of the flesh and desire, like putting that gap, it doesn't seem like you should be able to get.
It shouldn't work. It just flat out shouldn't work. That was my very first thought is, he's going to try to have a robot do the Lament configuration and it'll fail, of course, because the whole point is the human touch, the flesh upon the puzzle box. This will never work. And then it works and you feel like, well, that's too easy. Yeah.
It's just, I mean, I understand that it's like they have said in 2, it's not the hands that call us, it's the desire. But at the same time, they're still hands. These are flanges or whatever.
So you're saying they did need the skin grafting that the T-800 always, travels through time.
Yeah, they would need that. Like if they, I mean, that would also be perfect if it just had just human hands just grafted onto it. Make it look like some kind of weird Warhammer servitor or something like that.
That would have been cool, like bloody stump hands.
Man. And then, I mean, you get to see, because he's watching it and you see some like pretty iffy CG of the I guess it's the point of view of the robot.
It's bad CG of its hands.
Yeah.
But buddy, if you like that shot moving forwards, you are in luck because you'll see it in reverse a little bit later.
Right as he opens the box and you get a few flashes of Pinhead early on because, we can't wait too long to see him. So we're going to put him up front here. Bunch of soldier guys come in. And by bunch, I mean, 3?
I think there's about 6, but
it's like the company from Aliens, like your Space Marines kind of characters.
The Space Marines show up and are like, stop what you're doing.
Yeah, for whatever reason.
Well, I also like that the ship it has actually less character than the Critters 4 ship. Actually, now that I think about it, when did Critters 4 go to space?
Pause and I'll just watch Critters 4 so I get this reference.
Yeah, we'll just do this real quick. Oh, 92. Critters 4 went to space before them even. That it is in the initial script, this was supposed to happen on a mining colony, on an asteroid. And it said in the script, Christopher Atkins wrote don't make it be just bare metal walls. Let's have rock incorporated into it. And they just went, guess what? Bare metal walls.
Still better than Dracula 2000, 3000,
Dracula 3000 is in a basement. It's in a pipe filled basement. It's the basement of the movie Space Mutiny.
This Pete Davidson, Vin Diesel looking guy is Dr. Paul Merchant, and he's just very into the puzzle box. And so much so that he built the entire space station that we're on as a big old trap to capture hell.
He says he alludes to it. He hints at it by saying he's going to utilize light to destroy hell. Right. But what you don't know at that time is that the ship itself, the space station itself, is a giant puzzle box. That's the big ending shot reveal, but we're getting way ahead of ourselves. I think his name is Philip, by the way.
No, because there's 3, because there's Philip, John, and
of course,
Paul.
Generations.
I think that one
Bloodline, guys. Bloodline.
Yeah. Right. But I wasn't sure at first about that until I actually looked at the ship for 2 seconds. It's very obviously like that's going to become a box. There's no mystery about it. Like it's just these panels just sitting there, and it's like, okay,
speak for yourself.
I'm sorry. As a genius, I saw 4 squares.
We get right into a flashback.
He's captured by Muppet Babies Gina Gershon.
Yeah, Rimmer is her name. She's interviewing him, and rather than like give any information that would be useful, like don't open that door, he goes on and tells his whole story. Was this a reshoot? Was this part of the original work print?
I don't think this was in the work print. Yeah.
It feels like Bruce Ramsey, who plays this character, like kind of forgot what his character is supposed to sound like. And instead went, you know what? I've been watching Deep Space Nine. I'm just going to do Avery Brooks. Because in that opening thing, he sounds like Cisco. And it was very distracting. He's got the same cadence and same like intonation.
I made them leave. They're headed for Earth. Look, time is of the essence.
Was there some technical problem?
No. Yes, that's it. There's been a technical problem, and all of you have to get the fuck off this station right now.
What is the actor's name?
Bruce Ramsey.
Yeah, he's not up to the task in this, unfortunately. I mean, none of them are in a way, except for Adam Scott, who we'll get to. But we're supposed to believe that he's this incredible toy maker that makes the original puzzle box. And then in the space station, we're supposed to believe he's, the guy who's smart enough to outsmart Pinhead. And like, I don't buy any of it from this guy. Mm-hmm. He just seems like a young dude in over his head.
He has a small role. He's in Killing Zoe, which I don't remember. I have not seen since like high school, but he has a small role in this very like weird little Canadian movie called Pin that I highly recommend. It's got Terry O'Quinn from Lost and Stepfather, but tiny role in that. But other than that, I haven't seen this guy in much else. Yeah. But he's a working dude. He's been in tons of stuff, TV and
a working actor
whatnot.
here. But yeah, so we get into this flashback where an ancestor of his has made the puzzle box. Ancestor also played by Bruce Ramsey.
Yeah.
And he is to deliver this puzzle box at midnight for some reason, because that's the scariest time of night.
And we're in France, right? Like,
yes.
Oh, there's this great scene there where his wife just like bursts into the room right as he's finished creating the puzzle box. And he's like thrilled, like, oh, I've done it. And she like is so excited, like, oh, you did it. It's the greatest thing ever, right? And he's like, yeah, it totally is. And then she's like, show it to me. And so he sets the puzzle box down, makes it do kind of like half of what it does, where the top rises up and maybe turns a little bit. And she just stares at it and goes,
oh, doesn't actually do anything.
Yeah.
It's like, so brutal. It's just so harsh. It's like, lady, it's like 1500s. This is a little toy that moves itself. It's like a Rubik's Cube that solves itself. And she's so unimpressed.
Do you think she was being supportive of him, like through this entire, endeavor, I would hope. And then she sees just that.
Yeah. It's like she assumed it was going to be this amazing thing her husband was doing. And then she's like, wait, what? That's what you made?
Yeah. This is what happens when I describe this podcast to my partner. It's like, why are you're watching Hellraiser 4? Okay.
But think about that in terms of legacy context here. The puzzle box, the lament configuration, the Hellraiser franchise. The very first character in the entire franchise story to actually see the thing, be shown the thing, is like, oh, so it doesn't do anything.
Just scoffs at it.
That's it, huh? Yeah. Takes away some of its power a little bit. But they also, in the original version, he was already supposed to have met Angelique.
Right.
And been like very taken with her. And so wanting to rush to like, oh my God, Angelique. So there's this thing going on there, which is when they excise that, it is just weird. He's like, no, I have to show him this thing right now for some reason. And that when he arrives, they're like, yeah, absolutely. You're going to show up at 12 o'clock at night. That's when I'm up doing stuff. That's when I expect people to show up to my house.
That's when we do ritual stuff. Jacques, played by Adam Scott here. It appears that he's having a lady over, but he ends up just tying her to a chair and strangling her. And at that point, the box is delivered. And the toy maker watches kind of through the window as Jacques cuts off the dead woman's skin, and they suspend her from chains, and they start chanting. And
well, hang on, he's like second banana though, right? There's this other guy,
correct?
This other weird powdered face French dude,
Delille.
And Adam Scott's like his second banana, who obviously who goes out and uses his young handsome charms to find an unsuspecting woman, bring her back, and then they begin their ritual.
Which, as an actor, Adam Scott hadn't yet found his instrument at this point. Like, this was one of his first roles, and he He had a good time with it. He's like, yeah, it's fine. In fact, I guess went for a later Hellraiser 2 audition, hoping that no one remembered him.
Because he needed work still. Yeah.
It's one of those things where, all right, it's the past. It's France. Do you have people speak in French with subtitles? Do you have them speak in French accents? Do you have them just do British accents? No, you just have Adam Scott sound like Adam Scott. And yeah, it's 17th century France.
Whatever.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. And as we were discussing before we started recording, there on his boss's face is plenty of syphilis marks.
Yeah, dude likes to party.
Which I guess that is a visual storytelling aspect of him already seeking pleasures of the flesh out there. So they summon a demon, and I do dig the effect where a hole breaks open in the middle of their floor. I just like the way that thing looks for some dumb reason.
I was a little confused. Maybe you guys can help me recreate that scene, though, because it seemed like they sort of remove her skin to then hang her skin over this hole, and then her skin gets inhabited by the demon, which then basically returns her to a human-looking form that's identical to the woman before she was skinned.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, what do you need, a map?
Okay, I guess I got it right. And I doubted myself. I won't doubt myself next time.
Yeah. No, it's that stupid.
Next time I summon a demon, come on over. We'll show you how it's done.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting that you had to gut the whole thing first, that you had to clean it all out. You couldn't just be like, maybe makes you kind of wonder what she looks like before.
Yeah, we don't see Angelique in her demon form, I guess.
It's a weird thing to harp on, but it's this idea of the skin. The hand is like fully formed, but hollow. I'm like, there is no way that in the like 15 minutes of hacking that Adam Scott just did, that he could do that. Like, I know that's a weird thing in a horror movie to get hung up on, but it's like they make a point of showing like kind of the wrist and the hand hanging empty. And I'm like, no, not even the greatest surgeon in the world could have done that.
Well, I mean, there's a concept of degloving, which is a real thing. I had a nurse friend tell me never look that up. So I immediately looked it up. Not pretty, but it wouldn't. Yeah, the amount of time and skill it would take to keep it attached to everything and whatever.
It's still in the shape of a hand. That's the part that it's like
right.
But they have a pentagram carved into their floor, and then basically the idea is that the box is supposed to replace the pentagram. And I like that. Like, I'm a busy Satanist on the go. I don't have time to be carving things in places. I need a box.
We get a little bit of some semblance of rules here early on. A summoned demon is yours to command unless you stand in hell's way. So it's kind of like when we need that to be a thing later on, it'll be a thing later on.
Yeah, I mean, because it's pretty vague. Like, what does that even mean? Because frankly, summoning a demon that's under your control might be getting in hell's way.
Yeah, if I say, demon, bring me a bowl of cornflakes, is it like, that is, not hell's plan? Is that?
Yeah, that's, sorry. Hell prefers Rice Krispies.
I guess it's okay because you're not getting in the way, but like the parameters here are not clear. You need a rule book for this shit.
Yeah, this was back, as we find, this was when hell was a little bit more loosey-goosey.
That's true. Toymaker visits a friend of his who is performing an autopsy, and I do dig it when movies like this are just like, we can't have two talking heads in a room here. He has to be like ripping somebody open and performing an autopsy, which at least he gets something to look at.
Yeah, and he crushes Marchand's ass with logic and reason. Just boom, nails him.
For the sake of argument, that what you fear happened has happened. A box that can open the gates of hell must be able to close them.
Box belongs to people with little interest in closing such doors.
Well, then the solution lies literally in your hands. You've designed a machine that you fear can bring forth demons.
Yes.
Then design a machine that can destroy them.
Yeah.
Duh. It's like, thanks. I never thought of that. You made a nuclear bomb? Why don't you make a bomb that makes the world better? Think about that. I'm a genius.
Yeah. He kind of missed the accidental nature of what had happened, right?
Yeah.
Like he accidentally made a box that opens the gateway to hell. And he's just like, accidentally make a box that destroys hell.
But it's also, but I like that he's also just like, this is your problem. I don't care. Like, it's a way to just sort of give him the like, I'm carving up bodies here. I don't care about your little toys, man.
From there, he sneaks into the two occultists' apartment and finds the older guy just dead with a blade through his mouth and the puzzle box.
Which surprised me. It was a sudden departure of that guy.
Yeah. We didn't get to see the on-screen death of him.
I think that I didn't realize that the Adam Scott Jacques character like had it in him to overthrow his boss. That's clearly what happened, right? Adam Scott's guy is like, oh, I'm going to have this demon for myself and I'm going to, kill my boss. But there was nothing that he'd really done before that would have let me think he would be capable of doing that or have even thought to do that.
Sure.
I mean, even afterwards, like I understand that they try and through the different directors sort of fail to establish that like the nature of hell has changed. But they do. So I guess this is before we had talked about like where even are they in Leviathan's world or whatever? Nope. It's hell. It's all just hell. I thought it was pervert world.
Right.
It's hell.
Yeah.
Same place. Pervert world sounds like an amusement park.
Don't describe your fantasies to us.
It's got circus music playing in the background for you.
It's the Venga Bus. The Six Flags song. Oh man, that Six Flags guy, that's a pervert. Anyway, hell is a lot more like frivolous. So when she and Adam Scott, like she and Jacques are like having sexy time, it strikes a little weird compared to what we've seen before because it lacks that animal passion and hunger that like say Julia and Frank had. It's like something, and like the sex scenes in this movie tend to look like Cinemax scenes or that one later specifically Top Gun.
Yes.
The eroticism is so much safer in this compared to the other one. So that kind of took me out of it for a second, but then like in context, there's an explanation for it, but it still is outside of what the Hellraiser
I think I
usually
watch more movies with you, Myers. So I always know who's a pervert and who's not. Yeah. That's a pervert.
Just the Six Flags guy. I mean, if you're in a Hellraiser movie, you're some kind of pervert. Your character's some kind of pervert. I'm like QAnon for just watching movies like that guy's a pervert. Yep, that guy's a clone. That guy's not real.
At this point, Ramsey immediately offers up his soul, which is kind of funny, and then Angelique just straight out kills him.
Toymaker, you have such pliant fingers. I want them to play with me.
Take my soul.
Didn't ask.
That line makes no sense. Okay, like they've had no previous relationship, but he's like, a pretty girl is talking to me. I don't know what else to do. Here, how about my soul?
At this point, Angelique just kind of takes over as the head demon for a while, yanking out hearts, looking good.
She is the antagonist at this point.
So that's it for the France stuff in this movie.
Yeah, it just jumps to like, oh, it's him back on the ship. And he's like, well, and then she hung around for a while and years later caught up with my family.
Yeah.
He has built the building that we see at the end of 3, which it seemed like that happened because she buried the box in the cement. So is it the idea that the box drew him there? Is this a separate building?
There's some dialogue from Pinhead somewhere in here where he makes some statement about like the box made this happen. Some force of energy that it has kind of caused this building to then become constructed the way that it became constructed to then be this gigantic gateway to hell. But it's so murky, right? Like you want to figure it out because I always thought the end of Hellraiser 3 and this part of the concept of Hellraiser 4 was cool, right? This idea of
the big building,
a building that is element configuration, right? A building puzzle box. And there's so much you could do with that. And they don't do any of it. But
it's also kind of surprising that they've never thought of it before.
Yeah.
They're like, well, this tiny thing lets like one of us through. What if we made it bigger? But whatever. I'm with you. I do like that as a concept. I don't like that. Again, we're getting further and further away from the initial theme of this, which was sort of like the danger of desire and that like the seeking out, that this was a thing you had to seek out and get, where it's like, no, this is manipulating you and everyone around, in ways we can't possibly understand. And that's a little less exciting to me, or at least it's just a different tack that I don't really enjoy as much.
I do like the way that the set design is, especially when he's giving his speech with all the giant pieces of architecture around him in the room that looks like the lament configuration. That always it was obviously at the end of part 3, but I just think they did a good job.
The last scene of The Brutalist totally ripped that off, actually. I just put it together.
Right. Yeah.
I did like that because a lot of this 90s stuff is just so straight to video looking.
Yeah.
And this was a cinematic release, but this looks
Notably,
like
the last Hellraiser released in the theater.
That's right. And it because it looks more like the later like Silent Night, Deadly Nights, or like Omen 4, where it just kind of has this flat TV look to it.
Yeah.
And I mean, in both cases of, well, in the original director, Kevin Yeager's case, this was like his first real big directorial debut. He had done a Tales from the Crypt. He's responsible for the Crypt Keeper. He was an effects guy, but this was his first like big directorial thing. And then the Joe Chappelle, who stepped in previously, had done the 6th Halloween movie, which I believe is The Curse of Michael Myers. And that's a fan favorite. So
yeah, exactly. I don't remember those movies as well as other people do, but I do know that one is not looked upon well.
Yeah, it's very much like, and particularly because he was brought into like, we don't have a whole lot of money, let's just make this work. In both their cases, they weren't that interested in a lot of style. Did you read about, or did you hear about like who the other directors floated were supposed to be?
Stuart Gordon, Del Toro as well.
Del Toro's name floated up there because Kronos was starting to get big, but Stuart Gordon, I would have loved to have seen a Stuart Gordon Hellraiser. That would have been just pretty goofy.
It's a missed opportunity for sure.
Yeah.
But apparently there were artistic differences, which isn't too surprising.
Especially after part 3, if you want to get back to it being a little bit more darker and serious than part 3, I don't think Stuart Gordon would be the fit, but still want to see it.
He would have made a very horny Hellraiser.
It would have differently horny. It would have been differently horny. It would have been a little bit more classically horny.
Yeah.
Right. So Angelique is still in France at this point, and she needs to get over to the United States just because she sees John Merchant on the cover of a Architectural Digest magazine cover, which I thought
a Civil Engineering International.
She's like, wow, I'm glad I subscribed to this or whatever. Like, finally.
I'm tired of getting John Kramer on all my covers. Right. Finally, someone else.
She wants to leave. Adam Scott won't hear of it. And then this is where he is standing in the way of hell. And she rips his heart out, I believe.
Yeah. Well, first she does like a Pfeiffer Catwoman on his face, slashing a few times. And then she sticks her finger into a hole in his face for a little bit. He gets a very drawn out death scene, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, she then rips his heart out.
Yeah, he was very boring. He's been alive for 200 years and apparently kept youthful by her, but just is still just like drinking a lot and hanging out. I mean, I guess if that's what you're into, that's I mean, if it was Reggie from Phantasm, what would be different? Really. But it was just kind of weird that he's like, no, I still look exactly the same. There have been no ill effects other than I'm just grumpier now.
Maybe he got to that point of like, vampire movies where he's just bored with being alive for so long and all he could do is drink and smoke and stay in.
I guess, but it doesn't seem like that. Like when she's like blindfolds him, it's like, ooh, is this a new game?
That's true.
Like you'd be like, yeah, I've seen that. They would have to be like, so particularly in a Hellraiser movie, it's like, no, now you have to pee in this particular shape of cookie jar and throw it at me. That's the only thing I enjoy now.
Yeah. In New York now, John is getting an award for the buildings that he's designed, and this is where the banquet hall is all decked out.
In this bit, he's abandoned his Avery Brooks impression to go straight Vincent D'Onofrio. Like he is doing D'Onofrio in Law and Order, Criminal Intent. I've been rewatching that show lately, and his read is exactly Vincent D'Onofrio.
Thank you. I've always thought that the applause from your peers is the best kind of applause, and I am truly touched by your reception and by this award.
So this guy's talented. He just can't hone in on it.
He needs a director, one consistent director to keep his performance on the rails.
Which was not happening. I mean, it's not like Kevin Yeager had so much other stuff to do. Like there was, after the first week, they had to fire the DP and get the guy from the director of photography and get the guy from part 3 in. Like the whole, I think it was like the makeup staff got sacked. There was just a lot going on. Doug Bradley does not have nice things to say about this production.
Right. And since Yeager came from a makeup background, I know he got credited in the Alan Smithee version as like additional makeup. So I wonder if he was also just like, fuck, I'll do this. Like,
could be,
get into the workshop.
That is not what a syphilitic sore on the lip looks like.
Believe me.
Let me get this right.
Yeah.
He did there's a character that he worked on later that we'll get to when we get to. But for a lot of the stuff, he brought in the people from Image who did the previous ones, which they were like, well, if he's an effects guy, oh, crap, there goes us. But he was like, no, you guys worked on this. You know how this all works. Come in. And so I thought that was pretty cool.
It is funny. The writer Atkins did say that the producer on part 4 here This was her first big feature that she was a producer on. And she called 10 days before they started shooting and just said, your effects budget is twice what we have to spend on the movie in its entirety. And Adkins just said, like, well, who'd you get the quote from? ILM? And she said, yeah. It's just like, we're the fourth installment in a B movie. You don't go to Industrial Light and Magic for the effects quote.
Yeah.
Like, temper the expectations. So yeah, there was a lot of resources being passed around for this one. Yeah, so Angelique shows up at the banquet and calls him Toy Maker. At which point he flees and she takes some random schlub guy down into the basement. And of course, he can't believe his own luck that Angelique is talking to him.
This kind of scene is such a trope in movies, right? Where you've got just rando white man business dude, an attractive woman comes up and, instantly is interested in him. And he's like, oh my gosh, I must be having the luckiest night of my life.
It's like in Hellraiser 1. Like Julia does that to a couple of guys too.
Yep.
Yeah, well, see, now that was at least like at a bar, they're cruising. True. This was, he bumps into her to make her drop her purse. She's like, you moron. Oh, I'm sorry. I better have sex with you now.
Yeah, I guess I owe you something.
I do, like, because he's very apologetic. This might be my favorite character in the movie because he's very apologetic. And then when she's like, well, let's go have sex, he's like, well, obviously, why wouldn't you? And I like that self-assuredness, but then he does nothing but complain the whole time. He's like, what's your name? Why are we going down here? I'm cold. Why do I have to take my shirt off? Just like this, you just hit this jackpot. You're like, I'm miserable. This sucks. But maybe people take him downstairs to take his shirt off all the time. Maybe this is just normal for him.
So yeah, she takes him down there. This is where she punches into the wall and finds the puzzle box from, I guess, the end of part 3 that was buried in there.
Yes, she follows her intuition.
It took me a moment to remember that was the connection too. So for better or for worse. Under her guidance, he solves the box very quickly, which again, if this guy can solve a puzzle box, it pisses me off since Frank was seeking it. I need to tamp that down.
Well, you guys have been talking about Hellraiser for 3 movies now, and this is number 4. So I do want to ask about that. My impression is it's not supposed to be difficult.
In the first 2, yes and no. Like it's really the finding of the box that's the most difficult part. It's really that pursuit, and then there's a puzzle aspect to it. But in 3, they bring up this concept of that the box wants you to solve it, and so it helps you and guides your hands.
Like the ring, it wants to be found.
Right. So I think there's an element they've now made it. So that's an element of it. But in this one, they also get rid of we already brought it up, it's not hands that call us, it's desire, because unless it's like using his desire to have sex with Angelique.
Oh yeah.
As like a conduit, it kind of makes it, because he gets killed. He gets the wall opens up, Pinhead steps over, well, chains come out, get into this guy, rip him off, which is pretty cool.
I do think it's his desire, though. It is pretty clear when it cuts to him with his shirt off, sitting on the ground with the puzzle box in front of him, very much referencing the original movie. Yeah, he's excited. Yeah. I mean, that is pretty clear. I think we're supposed to believe that it's his, sexual excitement that is essentially triggering this thing. Right.
Not the desire for this box or this experience, but just this sort of a generalized desire.
I dropped the box on my boner. Did you guys all catch that?
But yeah, Pinhead arrives with his dog.
Very good boy.
The Chatterbeast, as it's called, which is that's the one that Kevin Yeager worked on.
Looks like shit, unfortunately.
I am not a fan of it.
It's like a cross between a Ghostbusters animated gargoyle and a Resident Evil zombie dog.
Yeah.
And yet not as cool as either one of those.
Yeah.
I think it would have looked better if it was, and this would have required time, of course, if they would have been able to like fully stop motion it, because it would have given it like kind of an otherworldly, eerie kind of quality, maybe.
I also like that. Yeah. Pinhead now has his job, got rehired in hell, but now he's just his boss's dog walker.
Yeah.
That's he's just taking care of his boss's dog.
He's got to work himself back up.
Hellraiser 2, Hellraiser 2, the upgrade is a labyrinth, right? We have the labyrinth of hell. And then Hellraiser 3, all right, it's goofy, but it's like you get some modern day Cenobites that, shoot CDs and have cameras stuck in their faces. And Doug Bradley's like, all right, Hellraiser 4, what do we get this time? Well, you get a dog.
Yeah.
You get a dog.
Pinhead gets a dog.
dog that's like wearing bondage gear, which I just don't want to think too much about. I did see a reference, and I don't know if this is actual like Hellraiser lore introduced in comics or whatever, but evidently the backstory of that dog is it's the result of a guy who was driving a car who hit a dog. And so the dog and the guy become one creature, which is the Chatterer dog. So, yeah.
Okay. That's a Friday at 4:30 Cenobite. That's I'm clocking out for the day. That's like Pinhead towards the end of his career, his first career was just like, it's this guy. I don't know.
So this is the big appearance of Pinhead. He recognizes Angelique.
Things seem to have changed.
Hell is more ordered since your time, princess, and much less amusing.
So he's aware of who Angelique is. Doesn't call her a demon, calls her a princess.
But he does call her princess. You've been away too long, princess. That line, the like, hell is a lot more orderly, is supposed to be like a diss that like your old way is done, but there's a little bit more like forlornness in his voice. Like, oh, it's not the same since you've been around. When your hell was all like busty Harlequin demons, and now it's just an elaborate spanking machine. Like, why don't you come back?
Yeah. Angelique then shows up at John's office in his architecture office. He recognizes her, and she sees an old manuscript on the wall. And this is where he explains.
This has been in my family for hundreds of years. I'm working on something based on it.
May I see it?
Nobody's seen it.
Then let me be the first.
Does he name it the Elysium configuration, or did I just read that somewhere?
I don't think it ever gets. No, it never gets mentioned in this version of it. I mean, like in reading about it, that came up. I don't know if in the work print, but that's what his genius ancestor came up with as a trap. And it's basically a exploded puzzle box. You see the inside of it, and inside is just a bunch of squiggles. Yeah. And he's like, inside there's some stuff that does it.
Yeah.
Boom.
I get so confused on continuity here and what's going on, because this movie starts with the toy maker saying, oh, this is a commission. I'm making this for someone else who wants me to make this thing. But now we're supposed to believe that this is a design that he's been working on his whole life because it's passed through his own family. It's kind of like at first they're attributing it to the weird syphilitic French dude, but now they're saying, no, actually, this is this guy's blood heritage to do this. I kind of don't get it.
Because they don't really establish that this is a separate box. They don't do that groundwork at all to go like, no, this isn't this, because it seems like the exact same puzzle box. But like, no, this is a puzzle box with squiggles inside of it, which makes it different. That was the quest, was to try to find a way to beat hell, but they just do no. So much of this movie is just slammed together, so they do no work to establish any of that. So yeah, it's very confusing. I did in this moment though, like their relationship with John, the 90s now merchant, he's going by that, and Angelique reminded me a lot of Carla Gugino in Fall of the House of Usher.
Oh, I didn't watch that one.
Okay, it's like just this specter of your past that's come to collect due for like, I had nothing to do with this. Why are you after me?
Right.
So you guys got to remind me, in Hellraiser 1, 2, and 3, do they have this kind of writing where other characters that aren't Pinhead just lob these softballs at Pinhead so that he can give a big, like, grandstanding retort? Like they have Philip say, for God's sake, just so Pinhead can say, do I look like someone who cares what God thinks?
Really, in 3, that happens a lot more. Yeah, 2, maybe. But I feel like in the first 2, he's got a bit more gravitas.
But by the time part 3 rolls around, they're trying to Freddy him up a little bit and give him not really one-liners, but like some stuff that he can talk about.
I liked Pinhead just fine in this one. I didn't have any issues with him.
I think they scale back a little bit from part 3.
Yes. They do make him a little like Blofeld at times, like when he's got the bird and he's like, aha, and he sort of outlays the plan.
Yeah.
The makeup's better, back to being like pretty good compared to 3. And then like, I mean, Doug Bradley just is always sells it and is always great. I didn't remember that whole line about
pain has a face. Allow me to show it to you, gentlemen. I am pain.
that was this far into it. I'd kind of forgotten about that line. I don't know if I'd heard that in an industrial song or something.
I'm sure it is. I don't know which one, but
yeah.
So John starts having the aforementioned sex dreams about Angelique, bathed in blue moonlight type.
Yeah, that is the Top Gun. Take my breath away. You can put that Berlin song under it. The same scene. A
couple of twin cops find a doorway to a hallway that didn't used to be there. And
the comic relief show up just in time.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Their name tags say Bradley on it. And I did like giving credit where credit's due. I did like just like the look of that hallway when they first looked down it. It looked like creepy and ominous and almost like a matte painting to a point.
Yeah.
It just looked good.
They get turned into Cenobites. And I like this effect. This was a pretty well done effect where conjoining the twins basically. And there's like a weird little device that they start getting squished together basically. But then there's like something turning in between their heads that kind of like pulls their flesh onto it like a wheel. So it kind of wraps like candy going around like a taffy. Thank you. Like a taffy pull.
Yeah.
And so both of their faces get kind of pulled into this conjoined taffy pull contraption.
And then they sort of get the theater masks, like one's kind of smiling, one's kind of frowning.
I mean, it's goofy, but I liked it.
It's a neat thing. I wish I kind of had done more with them.
It's just unique. You know, it's not just like blades going into flesh type of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, I think one of the worst things to happen to Leviathan was Leviathan firing Pinhead and then like Christie waking Pinhead up because Pinhead still can't get rid of his like delusions of grandeur and wanting to lead. Because again, he's walking his boss's dog. That's his job. And he's like, well, I need an intern.
Yeah, right.
And he makes a guy. I think he was just showing off to Angelique, but whatever.
We established it in part 2. There's like a machine, for lack of a better word, like a little chamber that Leviathan creates Cenobites in.
Apparently. I mean, that's how he does Chenard in 2. Yes.
But as of part 3, Pinhead can just make Cenobites as he wishes.
Yep. Which they did, speaking of Leviathan, that this was like I think it was something like the 65th time the makeup had to be applied to him or something like that. And so Kevin Yeager gave him a little bus pass from like Leviathan Central as sort of an award for sitting through it so much.
They did have, I did make note of it, that they did get the little tube injection things in their backs that happen in the Leviathan chamber in part 2 that turns him.
Red goes out, blue goes in.
So he's got a mobile Cenobite machine that he can bring in. Jack, the little kid, is down at the bottom of the stairs and he's holding hands with Pinhead. And Pinhead looks up at the mom and says, "You suffer beautifully, but I am here for business, not pleasure."
Well, Pinhead is kidnapping a child to try to, because they're like, well, we got to get his dad. It's all just to lure the dad who's like refuses to help, I guess. But like that seems beneath you, Pinhead. Just kidnapping a child.
So generic, like.
Well, yeah, so it's such just a Batman henchman move.
He does say something to the effect of the greatest pain that a parent can have is the suffering of their children.
But that's not his motivation, right? Like,
yeah.
He then later says that he just wants bait. He's like, what I want right now is bait. You know, like, okay.
I don't know. It's not my Pinhead. I'll say that much.
Eventually, John comes home and his family is being held hostage at his office. So he's got to go all the way back to the office to save his family. But now I did like this, though, where it's very, again, very Aliens, where the inside of his office is now covered in ominous light and chains. And like it looks like, hell is kind of taking over his office. So it looks like in a corridor in Aliens where, all the slime stuff is taken over.
It's very Silent Hill, like.
Yeah.
Which I realize this is earlier, but that sense of like you're seeing one space and then you're seeing this alternate version of that same space with lots of extra goop on the walls.
And there's like wolf heads and body parts and, it's like an album cover.
Because they both want, like, so she's trying to get the new box through seduction and Pinhead's trying to get it through child kidnapping. Pinhead's works, so that's a lesson. Right. There's a lesson to be learned there.
Pinhead just now states that he wants John to modify the room that Pinhead liked earlier. Make it like a bigger, just kind of portal to hell, so that he can just sort of like come and go as he pleases, like a little like.
I'm tired of ducking my head.
Yeah, like I need a Penn station for hell. Just any place I can show up. The box is, only a model, and with his help, they could just open up the entire thing.
I love how unclear the parameters of this work are, right? Like, because there's a scene right after that where Angelique is like, well, get to it. And I'm like, get to what?
Yeah.
Like, the building has already been built, right?
Yeah.
What was he supposed to do at that point to be like, well, I guess I'll just
make it go.
Flip a switch and now it's a gateway to hell.
Yeah, do some magic.
Turn on box power. Yeah.
Mom gets chased around by the Chatterer dog.
Real quick, I would like to shout out Mom, Kim Myers, who I actually really liked. She's in, along with Kevin Yeager's work, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
But I liked her as his wife. I thought she had this naturalistic performance for this movie that I was not expecting, but saying something positive for a change about Hellraiser 4.
She did have a funny line earlier on when we first meet her.
Just don't haunt my dreams. They haunt my work. Everything that I've done.
I don't want you haunted.
Don't want you haunted.
Yeah.
It's just so good.
But and her line dispatching the Chatterbeast, which is just immediately taken care of. Like that's kind of it.
But then we have to watch the Chatterbeast get dealt with again later. Like there's two
that's true.
scenes of it being destroyed. Yeah. It doesn't even bite anyone.
No, like there's an implication it bites someone at one point, but you don't really see it.
They're trying to turn the room into some sort of light machine somehow now. But then like Pinhead decides to decapitate him with a chain. So this is like while he's trying to create the portal, which is what Pinhead wanted.
Angelique wants him to make this Elysium box to destroy hell because she doesn't like the elaborate spanking machine it's become.
Yeah.
So she's like, get rid of it. Pinhead sees an opening when it kind of doesn't really work and is like, boom, I'll kill you. And then when his wife opens the actual box, then he tricks Angelique to like get sent back into hell.
Have you watched the same movie? Jeez, you unpacked all that from that scene?
I had someone explain it to me because it's really not present on the screen.
Now Mom tries to open up the box again, but the chains grab Angelique and pull her in. And all the big boxes explode and sucks Pinhead right back in. So as usual, all it takes is somebody just opening a box again to defeat Pinhead, sucks him into a box. So with 22 minutes left in the movie, we're back in the future.
Space.
Yeah, we're back in space. Merchant has actually summoned Pinhead along with the Angelique Cenobite and the Twisty Heads.
Yeah, so she's in like full Cenobite mode now, like with the top of her head pulled down. And so it's not clear if that's like her original form. Pinhead makes some kind of weird, they have a weird like sexually charged back and forth a little bit earlier where he's like, too bad they can't see what you really look like. But it's also not clear if this is punishment that Pinhead put upon her because she still looks like that one woman, which they conjured her to be in.
Right. She's a demon that gets turned into a Cenobite, not a human that gets turned into a Cenobite.
It can't be her true form because that was just Adam Scott's random like woman he picked up on the street.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. So I think this is just Pinhead kind of doing his Pinhead Cenobite thing with her. And I guess the design, they initially got that idea for the pull down head design from watching Sister Act. Or Sister Act 2, I forget which one, but it's just like the nun's habit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, made him.
I like the design. I think it's cool. Like peeling the scalp back and nailing it down. I think it works.
And then it like because that their relationship is less this like antagonistic. You don't get the sense of her sort of ultimately losing to him. It's just more like they were working together, and now she's just in his thrall.
Mm-hmm. So the Cenobites have been turned loose on the station, and in 23 minutes, we're going to see some sort of like solar thing happen. So like with any good space horror action type thing, we need a ticking clock that starts ticking down when this whole space station is going to explode.
It's amazing, really. It's like you get this little 20-minute horror movie crammed into the end of this other horror movie because this has all the tropes of just a standard like slasher. It's like, oh, Pinhead is now on the station. Oh, we've now got 6 Space Marines who have showed up, right? Mm-hmm. Well, he's going to pick them off one by one. Yeah. And it's just funny because all of it is so unearned, right? Because we don't know who any of these people are. They just showed up. We've never seen them. The only one we've seen is Muppet Babies, Gina Gershon.
Yeah.
And, but now we're going to watch them all get picked off.
Yeah.
And it kind of works purely on a gore horror level because there's some cool effects for sure.
Yeah.
But it's just sort of alienating in the sense that you're like, I don't know who any of these people are. And none of this has been earned because there's no buildup to this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, and I think that's also a problem with their sort of restructuring and wanting to make it like, let's put the space stuff at the front and then flash back and come back to it. Because the rest of the time you're like, oh, well, this is somehow going to end in space. And there's no way to, it'd be very difficult for this thing to not just feel episodic because it is like, here's the French stuff, here's the modern stuff, here's the future stuff. But in doing so, and that kind of like flashing back with the centralized piece, by the time it gets to this, where the narrator lives, I'm done. The story's over for me. I'm tired of this. I don't care now, rather than letting it kind of naturally build towards this. And
it would have been interesting to reveal that this movie has a sequence in space at the third act mark of the movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She'd be like, okay, what the hell? You know, whether you're for it or against it, it is something that would jar you out of it. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You know, I doubt that they would keep that out of the marketing materials because they're trying to get butts in seats. But I think that'd be a blast to be there in the theater, not know it's in space, and then it flashes forward to 2127.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of corridor checking, as happens with these kind of movies. This kill didn't work for me so much. Angelique in the mirror grabs a soldier and pulls his head through. I guess the decapitation worked, but like the coaxing I thought was a little cheesy.
The idea is pretty cool. Like I like the idea of someone like coax someone in a mirror and then like, yeah, it's a mirror. It cuts your head off. But the as with everything in this movie, the execution of it was kind of lacking. It was kind of like, wait, what? Oh, right. Okay.
And Angelique's voice is dubbed in this version too. They dubbed her with an American actress just for whatever dumb reason. But in the work print, you can hear her actual performance. Guy gets killed by the dog. The soldier finds a puzzle box but can't open it. Then the Siamese twins guys. This kill is fun just because they separate, encircle him, and then just, what do they do?
Hug him?
Is that a smush or a gush? If you
Oh yes, a smush and a gush.
I believe it was a smush because I think we said you had to have two objects to be a smush.
There's two bodies.
Like a gush was just one thing coming down. Yeah, both in motion. So I think that's a smush.
Okay.
Yeah.
Listeners, if you want to listen to the last time Michael was on for Saw, not the last time, but the time Michael was on for Saw 6, we go over smush v gush as far as a mode of death. We skipped over, and this was a very weird bit. Pinhead does this twice in the movie where he like is able to be another person's voice and do like little kid voices.
Oh yeah.
Because I like when to get them out of the room that they're trapped in, there's a Marine outside, a space Marine, and they hear like little kids' voices. And so being a Marine, his first response is to shoot it. And like shoots the door open.
There could be children behind there. Let's blow away this door.
Yeah, quick, fire.
But yeah, once the twins smush the guy, there's a funny shot that the camera tilts down and you see just like clothes and body parts dripping. So like I guess that most of his body gets assumed into the other two bodies. It's kind of fun. I was hoping it was going to be like a triplet situation.
Oh, yeah. And then they'd be like the Three Stooges, but that was not to be.
Different movie.
There's Three Stooges Cenobites. I like that.
If Stuart Gordon
there you go.
was in this we would have had. It was
a Gordon Yeltsna production. Definitely would have had. They just grow as more bodies keep getting attached to them. Yeah.
Oh, how cool!
Right. Just bring Frank Henenlotter in here for his unique individuals. We got a new one. But yeah, then they they smush or gush that guy depending on your belief system. And then there's this whole time there's this ticking clock. There's this ticking clock. Time is a big theme through this, and boy, we're looking at that clock a whole lot.
So this is part of the problem with the writing here is that they want so badly to have Pinhead in space. They want to have this whole sequence in space, but all of the writing could have happened in any time period anywhere. Right. Like I think the first time I really noticed that was when Pinhead throws his voice to sound like little kids. Right. Because they fool, as you pointed out, they fool the Marine into freeing them by being like, oh, no, we're trapped. Let us out. And I'm like, you're in 2079 on a space station. But the mechanic of how to advance the plot is, oh, we've got to free some little kids who are trapped behind here.
And why would kids be up there anyway?
It doesn't feel futuristic at all. Like there's no reason for the Space Marine to. Like he should have been like, this makes no sense. I'm on a space station in the year 2079. Like, it's not Newt behind that wall.
I'm not.
Like,
I'm not getting any readings or something. Yeah, it's like
could
you just
happened in New York City in a 1980 movie, right? It just doesn't fit what the setting that they're trying to go for. And then you have, I think, the most insulting thing, which is that, Pinhead, this eternal being of hell in this space age setting, gets fooled by a hologram.
Yeah,
like, that's the big plot point of the climax, right? Is like Philip, or whatever his name is in this continuity, is talking to him, and we're supposed to believe that Pinhead thinks they're both in the same room, and then the guy like winks out of existence, like, ha ha ha, I'm not actually here. I'm on the spaceship with Muppet Babies Gina Gershon, and we're gonna fly off to Earth or wherever. And Pinhead's like, oh shit.
Yeah, it's very like, again, for this thing being about like the pleasures of the flesh and all that, and like him being able to sense that, no, the desire is what call us, whatever, to be like, yeah, this thing that's not even here. Like, I'm not vibing with this. I'm not picking anything up from this thing.
Like, he just would have known. And you can't just be like, oh, because it's set in the future now, holograms.
I mean, it's beyond just being a cheat. It just doesn't seem in line with Pinhead's whole thing.
In a way, it bookends itself perfectly, right? This is the same character who starts with, I'm going to have a T-1000 or whatever, open the puzzle box. That's the weird thing and then he ends it with, oh, I'm a hologram. Haha. It's like just parlor tricks, basically.
Yeah.
Do they get the box that brought them, that he summoned them to the space station with? Do they get away with that? Or is that just in there? Because basically what I'm getting at is just blow up the space station. They're in space. Where are they going?
Well, aren't we supposed to believe that the diagram from the guy's long passed along bloodline, that somehow there's some trick of capturing light here in the box, and the light is what undoes hell, right?
Destroys hell.
So it's not the explosion that kills Pinhead. It's that this is the ultimate configuration of this design, which, traps light in such a way that it destroys evil.
Yeah. But I'm saying that even if you don't kill Pinhead, they are thousands of miles away in space. Mm-hmm. You don't got to worry about it. It's fine.
It's not your problem anymore. Yeah.
It's not. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. Let Saturn deal with it. It's not your problem. Go be on Jupiter. Get more stupider. Not my problem.
So yeah, this is where the space station starts folding in on itself, becoming a giant puzzle box.
Did you guys ever have one of those flat Rubik's cubes in the 90s?
I did not.
No, but I know what you're talking about.
I mean, that's what this thing looks like when it starts moving, right? It's flat, but you can like make different shapes out of it by turning it and folding it upon itself. And like the trick of it is that the sides will connect to each other, I guess magnetically or something. Or I could not help but think about that.
See, I was hoping for more of like the ship from Spaceballs becoming the maid or something, or just some sort of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Zord kind of transformation. But it's just like folds up
into a giant box.
I mean, it's impressive. It's not like we're making those now, but it still is. I don't know. It was a little underwhelming. But I mean, I was very underwhelmed at this point, so it really couldn't do very much. And if our explanation didn't make a lot of sense, it doesn't, because this movie is a mess. It does feel like just different movies spliced together. There's just no coherent language through any of it. Like, just the story just gets really just cut up, and it like was constantly getting confused about what plot beats were happening, because it's like the bare minimum is done and they don't really establish characters and stuff.
The thing that was most confusing to me was definitely Angelique, because the whole first half of the movie really tries to set her up as she's important. She's not just rando demon they've summoned. She's actually like somehow connected into the hierarchy of hell on a meaningful level and has a relationship with Pinhead on a meaningful level. Now they try that scene where it's like, oh, she wants to destroy hell now for reasons you don't understand. But by the end of the movie, you don't even know who she is or what she means anymore. It's just, it's all been just thrown out.
Well, then, I mean, by the end of the movie, she's just a subordinate of Pinhead. She's just another Cenobite.
And as John hinted at, there could have been some explanation for why that was in terms of her dynamics with Pinhead, but we never really understand it. It's never clear.
Well, let's go ahead and honor our dead. Peasant Woman, played by Valentina Vargas. strangled with fabric. Duc de Lacy, played by Mickey Cottrell, face wrapped with barbed wire. Philip Le Marchant, played by Bruce Ramsey, stabbed by Angelique. Jacques, played by Adam Scott, heart pulled out by Angelique. Mr. Sharp, played by Louis Mastillo, hooked in throat. Michael and Mark Bradley, played by Michael and Mark Polish, faces fused become Cenobite. John Merchant, played by Bruce Ramsey, decapitated with chain. Parker, played by Ren Brown, skinned, impaled through top of head. Carducci, played by Pat Skipper, decapitated by glass wall. Chamberlain, played by Tom Dugan, mauled by Chatterer Beast. Edwards, played by Paul Perry, face fused by Siamese twin Cenobite. Including the twins as their own person, we're with 12 big deaths in this one. So not quite a nightclub slaughter level of part 3. We're back down to a manageable level of 12 in this one. But yeah, I don't know. I think I like this one a little bit more than you two, but I was also having fun trying to piece together the various versions in my head and trying to do a little bit of like, well, I know that they meant to do this and I like that idea. However, I agree the execution is not so hot.
Reading about it and learning about how messed up it all got was interesting in its own way, and just kind of like learning how movies can go off the rails like that. It's a miracle they got anything at all. As Doug Bradley himself has said, he's like, I think the first 20 minutes, this based on my end is just as good as as the other ones, but the rest of it I don't know about. But I think there's a lot of interesting ideas. I don't necessarily love thematically the direction that they're going, but it's the same people behind it for the most part. You know what I mean? Like it's still Barker and Atkins. Yeah. But then that gets all chopped up because Atkins could only do some rewrites. Because like someone else brought it, and then there were 3 different editors. Like they were throwing everything in this movie, and no one gave a damn at a certain point.
I know a way to praise this movie.
What's that?
It is so much better than Hellraiser 5.
Shit.
It is.
I was worried about that.
Yeah. All right, folks. This is where the paths diverge. The true people will be watching along with us for the next 6, I think.
Oh my God.
7? Yeah.
No, there's 11. Oh shit.
Total.
Yeah. Okay.
And then this is, a lot of people consider the first 3, its own trilogy, but because of like this quadrilogy box set that came out from Arrow, people are kind of calling this like, oh, it's the original quadrilogy, and it's all 4 of them are worth watching, and that's kind of what you need to know. Obviously, the other demarcation being that from here on out, they're straight to video. So
and no Clive Barker involvement whatsoever.
No Barker. Yeah. Doug Bradley's still hanging on for most of them. But yeah, what's the next one even called? Inferno? Because that's the Scott Derrickson joint.
Inferno, correct.
Yeah, we'll talk about it more in a couple of weeks, of course. But the next one is directed by Scott Derrickson, who went on to make a name in various horror movies. He did Sinister. He did what's the Marvel movie? He did Doctor Strange. So he's tasted some success after Hellraiser Inferno. So
yeah, and we'll get a reappearance from Craig Sheffer from Nightbreed.
Oh, right.
Who we talked about on our Patreon.
Yeah.
And you can check that out along with other stuff over on the This May Hurt a Bit Patreon. We just recorded a Midnight Meat Train, another adaptation of Clive Barker short story from Books of Blood. A special shout out to Patreon member Daniel Dowen. Thanks for reaching out, letting us know you enjoy the show. We enjoy having you as a listener. For the rest of you, feel free to join Daniel and all the other cool people over on the Patreon.
Michael, got anything to plug? You write another new album since you've been on or something like that, as you tend to do?
No, I have not. Most recent one is still Night Shifting by Haunted Hospital, so I would direct attention there.
Just listened to that a couple days ago while I was at the library working on a budget. So yeah.
Well, you did it wrong then.
What? Listening in the library?
Working on a budget? Come on.
You're supposed to be eating a sandwich in a morgue when you listen to that album.
There you go. There you go.
Right. Totally. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks so much for joining us again, and we'll find some new, fresh junk for you to watch next time. I don't know what we're doing after Hellraiser, but obviously you're always welcome back.
Well, that's what I love about this. Is the well always has more in it, right? You're never going to run out.
Yes.
Ever.
Oh, not at all. I mean, we'll be here till we finally hit Amityville eventually. So that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and then they keep making them. I mean, they're talking about Gremlins 3 now, even though we said that they shouldn't, you know.
And supposedly there's another Hellraiser being like floated these days after the Hulu one too. So yeah, there will always be more of these.
And Lord knows when they'll finally figure out the Friday the 13th.
Right.
Any day now.
All right, everyone. Well, cue up Hellraiser Inferno. I believe I tracked that down before we recorded. That's on Pluto. So I had to find another new free streaming service to find it on because I love collecting, but I don't know if I'm going to collect all these individual straight to DVD Hellraiser movies from here on out. So check them out on Pluto. I know you can stream them there. So until then, you can find us at This May Hurt a Bit Pod on Instagram, Hurt a Bit Pod on YouTube, and you can email us at thismayhurtabitpod@gmail.com. So watch some Inferno, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Good night.
Good night.
This has been a Caretaker Press production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling and music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find on Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at thismayhurtabitpod and email us at thismayhurtabitpod@gmail.com. Give us a 5-star review over on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.